Hey guys, I'm Bart Baggett. I'm your co pilot to the Hack and Grow Rich podcast. This is a simple journey through the mind and through the pocketbooks and toward more wealth and success. The genius behind this podcast is my partner, the Amazon Mastery course founder, author of Billion, Shaheen Cheyenne. Shaheen, I always mispronounce your name because I'm from Texas. So I know it's not Cheyenne like Wyoming. So how do you pronounce it given your mixed heritage?
Yeah, we just go with Shaheen Shayan. And for those of you guys who are just tuning in, we've got Bart Baggett here, who really is a badass in many ways for you guys who don't know him, but he is an author and just a general motivational human being, I think. And, this was one of the really cool things when I first met you. I heard you speaking on stage at that time, it was hundreds of high achievers, alpha males who were there to learn. And I was just floored. I was like, wow, this dude knows what he's doing. And then, of course, when I met you, I was thinking to myself, wow, like, I wonder if this dude really, like, if the image that he projects is really who he is, right? Or is it like one of his masks? And when I actually got to know you, I was like, whoa, he's actually way better than that image, which is
What a,
rare.
what a
So
great comment. I remember that lecture. I think it was something about the five success secrets. And I remember it was like three or 400 people. And I think on stage, we brought up a billionaire, a woman who had just sold a company. And we had this in-depth conversation with the mentality of thinking like a billionaire. And of course, I'm not a billionaire, so I can't claim that I am, but I really loved that lecture. I didn't know that was the first time you saw me speak professionally. That's very impressive. Thank you.
yeah, no, it was amazing. It was really great. So I think, one of the advantages of doing this show together is that we both really want to do this, guys. So as time stands right now, neither one of us get paid for doing this. We do this out of just passion for the topics that we talk about, but also just out of trying to be of service to the community in general. So what Bart and I are doing here and presenting this information to you in the best way that we can is really for your benefit more than anything. So really, kind of try to understand that. But today we're going to be talking about one of the things that um, Bart brought up to me earlier today, which is time management. So, how do you manage time? And what are some of the hacks as far as hacking time management? And also, we're going to talk about fitting in. I think a lot of you, especially if you're listening to this podcast or watching one of our channels, might have a feeling by now that you don't exactly fit in everywhere. And you might have the feeling that you may have been or still are a little bit of a misfit. Bart, do you feel that way at all ever?
It's funny. I was walking with a friend of mine, and we passed this really large truck from like 1965. Kind of like someone would be a serial killer in it or something. And I was telling her a story. I said, when I was in high school, my dad had four or five of vehicles, and I used to drive this milk truck to school. And the kids would kind of make fun of me because it was like, is this all you could afford? And it was absolutely not a price issue. We used to paint like happy birthday on the side of the truck. Like I was clearly embracing being a misfit and being ridiculous. Like it was being silly. And then the kids would go out and smoke pot in the truck and I get all upset about it on lunch breaks. It was really funny, but it was obviously like a $500 truck. But the point was, I didn't care that it didn't fit in. In fact, I embraced it as a young guy. And I also, especially during high school and college, I didn't have one clique. I wasn't an athlete. I just was kind of the funny guy that everybody either kind of liked or kind of hated, depending on, what end of the joke they were on. And so for me, it's always been a kind of a badge of honor to not be fitting in. And as I've gotten to know people like you and other leaders, I think some of the most successful people are those that are brave enough to not fit in, not comply, and have a knee jerk reaction to authority. And some of us just aren't employable. I don't know about you, Shaheen, but I'm not employable in a traditional sense because I have four businesses. I run my own schedule. Sometimes I sleep till 10, sometimes I'm up at 5. It really depends on what my day has. And so for me, I think I'm not that atypical because a lot of entrepreneurs got started in their own business because they didn't want to comply. Is that your experience being an entrepreneur and having entrepreneur friends?
Yeah, great place to start, right? So I don't think it's just entrepreneur friends. My friends are pretty diverse. As I know yours are as well. I've got friends that are artists, friends that are authors, friends that are academics and intellectuals, friends that are doctors, right? All these things are not necessarily business. They should have a sense of business, and I think most of my, friends and buddies do. But in general, um, I'll tell you, it started for me, Bart, when I was 5, right? And I was in Iran, and we were basically just street kids. I mean, not by street kids, I mean, we would leave like 5-year-olds. We would just leave the house and we would come back when we felt like it. It was like that kind of thing. And by the way, Iran, one of the safest places in the world, by the way, for that kind of stuff. So it was very safe. We would go out, there'd be no, you wouldn't really be worried about the stuff you worry about here often, right? So that kind of stuff just didn't happen, especially back in the 80s. I don't know about now, but I hear it's still very safe. But we would go and we would come back, and we were just, kind of this ragtag, like, group of like, misfits hanging out there. And then all of a sudden, overnight, my life changed. I moved here to the United States and went to school in the 80s. And this was right during Iran Contra. We've talked about this before, so I'll be brief about it. And it was the first time I realized that I did not fit in. And it's really interesting. I don't know if you've heard. Do you ever listen to there's a podcast, it's on Spotify. By the way, we have no connection to it. I wish we did. But it's Bruce Springsteen and Barack Obama talking about cool stuff. Have you did you listen to this podcast?
I've heard about it, but I have not had the privilege. But what a great concoction of two interesting people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Both guys that you just are like, you know what? They are world class as far as what they do. I mean, Obama, of course, being a world class statesman, regardless of your political affiliation. Because on the show we don't really talk much about politics and that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about just his demeanor and his statesmanship, right? He's an intellectual, he's an attorney. And then you've got Springsteen, who's this like he's the boss, right? He's this musician. But one of the interesting things that they were talking about on, I think it was their first episode, was just this feeling of not belonging. Obama being born in Hawaii to a black father and a, excuse me, Obama being born in Hawaii to a black father and a white mother. And, Bruce Springsteen growing up in this small town in Jersey, where, and surprisingly, both of them had some Irish descent, European descent, which was a shocking thing to hear. But they both kind of were misfits. They didn't belong. And then you look back through the history books, and you look at, and I'm not talking about hundreds of years ago, even though you can argue that even in biblical times, the people who we look at who were successful in those times were misfits. I mean, certainly, the traditional biblical story is a story of misfits, but you look back at like Steve Jobs, right? Complete weirdo, utter mutant. You look at, some of these other people, people that you and I both know that are hugely successful. And you're like, dude, these are not the cool kids at school. Like,
Well, it's interesting. They're cool now. One of our mutual friends, Nolan Bushnell, who hired Steve Jobs, he's like the crazy professor. And sometimes we get to spend time with him, and he's got this great idea, and he's over 70. He's like, I have this great idea for a video game, and he's still just as enthusiastic as he must have been in 1975 trying to sell his first video game, to Radio Shack. And there's just no way he's ever been normal. I mean, he's such an interesting guy. He looks sort of like the professor on Back to the Future. You know what I mean? He's just like this crazy idea guy, and he's such a lovely human being. But he was smart enough to hire Steve Jobs, and then smart enough to put him on the night shift because he couldn't get along with the people on the day shift.
that's right.
So he's like, I love nutty people. I love brilliance, but if they don't have social skills, we'll put them on the night shift. Like, that's so interesting to have that kind of foresight to recognize talent and genius and then tolerate non-compliance, or what I call defiance, meaning that it's a knee-jerk reaction to authority. I don't like being told what to do. It's kind of like we want to have that swashbuckling cowboy. Who's the Bruce Willis in the famous movies from the 80s, yippee mother bleep, that sort of American cowboy mentality, I think runs really strong through not only Americans but entrepreneurs around the world, where we do want to be the guy that slays evil dragons, but we don't want to have a boss. We
Yeah.
want to be the hero of our own story.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, look at Elon Musk, right? Two richest men in the world right now is what? Elon Musk and Jeff
Jeff
Bezos.
Bezos. Mhm.
Both fucking mutants. You look at these guys, you look at Bezos with his laugh, and you look at Musk, who's like, he's kind of like out of shape, and he like sleeps on the floor, and he like likes rockets, but he like makes flamethrowers. I mean, and you hear him talk, and he's an academic. He's as close as you get to a guy that's an intellectual and academic who could talk rocket science, but then can go out there with the cool kids and talk about Dogecoin and all these other types of like happening things. He's that smart. But if you rewind back to either of these guys, to any of these guys, back to a point where they were not billionaires, and you go back to their childhoods, these were not the cool kids. These were not the jocks who were taking the prom queen home, and this is not who these folks are. So I guess one lesson is be nice to nerds, because you never know what they will become. Super important, right? um but I think the other thing is, especially for people, I think now in their 20s, because I think, in your 30s, you kind of start getting a sense of like really who you are. And then by your 40s, most people have a family, or, they're well on the way to starting one, and they've kind of got their foundations laid out. But in your 20s, you still likely don't quite know exactly who you are or exactly who you're going to become. You might have some idea, but you still don't know, because you still have some formative decades ahead of you. And one of those, I mean, especially for me, and I'll tell a quick story if I can, because I know we're going to be doing a shorter show today. But one of those things was that I did not really fit in. And I look back to when I was a kid, and there was no box that I fit into. Right, I was like this Iranian kid, but I had all these business ideas, and I was hanging out with some of the like bad kids, but like I really wanted to fit in with the good kids, and none of that really made sense. And I look back in my 20s, and again, comes full circle to one of my mentors. We talk about him, this author, Stuart Wilde, who just said, what, dude, like the weirdos are the cool fucking people, and those are the ones that are going to be making this impact in the world. And that was kind of his teaching. He's like, look, come with me. If you like the traditional spirituality, you like the traditional all that stuff, there's lots of traditional people out there. Go to your Deepak Chopras and the Tony Robbins and whatever. But the thing that separated Stuart Wilde from the rest of them was that he was like, I curse, not me, but Stuart Wilde, I curse too. But Stuart would say he drinks, he smokes, he dates, he does all those, he's covered all the sins. So, and he's like, and if you're, one of these folks who don't fit in, you're okay. And he developed this whole philosophy around that, which was the coolest thing, because it really, it kind of was in his books and his recordings, but you really had to be there around the guy and the time to kind of understand, because show up in a room, and he'd have a bunch of people come, and you'd be like, oh, I get it. These are all fucking mutants just like me. And in that moment, you would realize that being strange is not something that you should be ostracized for. It's what's going to make you into the Jeff Bezos or the Elon Musk of what you want to do. And so I guess for me especially, it's owning that weirdness. When you really realize that, Bart, and you really realize, what, I'm a fucking weirdo, I'm a fucking mutant, and I will not fit in any one niche, even with the weirdos, and that's okay. I can hang with any of them. And when you have that, that's the ultimate power and flexibility, because you've taken ownership of all your shortcomings. You're good to go, I think.
It's really interesting you referred to Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra as mainstream because when they started back in the early 90s and 80s, they were definitely not mainstream. Tony Robbins was walking on fire. He was basically doing snake healing, snake phobia, 5 minute phobia cure. And so, what if you were talking to a 40-year-old businessman in 1985? Jim Rohn, the Les Browns, those were the mainstream. Those are conservative professional speakers. And religious wise, obviously, when the Beatles, started bringing in yoga and the, West and Eastern meditation from India, they were cutting edge freaks in late 60s, but again, these ideas became mainstream over 30 years. The image that pops into my mind when you talk about Jeff Bezos is there's a before and after, and he's a picture of him like pitching Amazon like in 1994, whenever it started, or 1996, and he looks kind of like an old Bill Gates, like big square glasses, kind of bald head, sweater vest. And then there's another picture of him walking, and he looks just like Vladimir Putin. Like
Yeah.
he's got muscles and a vest, like an army vest on, and he's got shaved head and he's got glasses, and that's like the 2021 version. And you're like, whoa, how does someone transform? Oh yeah, it's $1 billion. You can probably afford a personal trainer. But I think it's more than that. It's that at the time we think we're completely outliers, and then that becomes mainstream because people go, oh yeah, this is pretty great. And so if you're thinking that you're really a mutant right now, you may just be mainstream in 10 or 15 years. They may all catch up to you and go, hey, this is totally normal. I mean, this is 2021. When I started pitching my, hey, I can tell your personality from your handwriting, it was like astrology. People were confused. They didn't even know it existed. I even had Mel Gibson go, you can do what with your handwriting? Like it just wasn't a thing people knew about. And now I would consider it kind of mainstream. People use it to hire. People don't have that weird look on their face like, oh my God, that's just so odd. Do you read minds too? Like no one ever says that to me. But 30 years ago, it wasn't mainstream at all. Now it's part of the psychological, conversation with cognitive psychology. And so yeah, I stuck with it being the weird guy, and now I'm mainstream, which is odd because I still think I'm the weird guy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Those are really, really, really good points. So, I'll share a story with you, which I think is kind of cool. I think I may have shared this on a past podcast, but who cares? It's a pretty darn good story. It could just be you and me talking. I forget sometimes. Um, so it is 1998 ish, and I am in, I believe, Ireland or London. I think we might have flown into London, one of the two, and we had gone to a concert with Michael Stipe of REM, and he was there. Super nice guy, super weird too, by the way. And we get invited to a party after. Now, but mind you, we were at the REM concert with Michael Stipe and the entire band of U2. And so I'm in a room with these guys, and I'm just like, these. I grew up on the Joshua Tree, right? That was the album that I must have listened to 1,000 times. And now I'm like getting like vegetable croquets, and I look, and it's the Edge handing me a napkin. I'm like, thank you, Edge. And so they're all like, guys, we're there's a party we want to go to. It's George's party, and I'm like, okay, cool. They're like, yeah, just roll with us. And I thought to myself, okay, George. I like, who's George? They're like, George Michael. And I said, so any of you guys who, who've read my book by this point, because the book's not out yet, it'll be released in August, but my book, Billion, I tell a story about how I was super, super obsessed over George Michael in my teens. And there's this crazy fiasco that happened. I tried to look like him in school, and it did not go well. So you'll have to check that out in the book. But so now I am being invited to George Michael's party. And this was back in, I think he was doing a cowboy and angel theme. I think he had an album or a song called Cowboys and Angels. I know he had a song called that, or a song with that in the lyrics somehow. And so, and I'm going with Michael Stipe and U2, the band U2. And I had, this was, at the height of the success of Herbal Ecstasy, and everybody was like, oh, here's this kid, he's made $1 billion, and I'm on all the newspapers and magazines. So I was kind of floating around in these circles, but even this was like way over my head. Like these rock gods, I was just, I didn't know what to say to them, right? It was just like, it was bizarre being in a room with these people, seeing them as normal people and just having normal conversations. Um, so then the night gets crazier, and we end up at this, I think it was like a bar restaurant kind of situation. And we walk in with Michael Stipe and you two. And of course, Donovan, the singer, who's a friend of mine, was there with us, Mellow Yellow Donovan, and his wife, Linda. They were with us. And so we all just, it was like this all-star cast of people and me walking into this, restaurant. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a very interesting night. And we get in there, and there's George Michael, super gracious, super nice, hanging out there, just having fun. And, he greets us all, right? He comes straight to us, and we get taken to this table. Now, this night gets even crazier. So there's everybody who you could imagine there at this party. Dude, Elton John was there at the table at this party. So you've got Elton John, George Michael, you two, Michael Stipe, couple randoms, and me sitting at this table. And they're all completely normal. They're just normal people. I mean, yes, they're rock gods, but I'm just like talking to them. Probably the most distant one was Elton John, who's a bit older than the rest of the guys. And I remember just looking at all these guys, and it was in that moment that I realized. Well, first I was wondering, like, are they wondering who the fuck is this kid like sitting at the table with them? Because I'm the only one that doesn't have like 50 platinum records and fill stadiums.
You had really long hair at this time, right? You
I did
looked
have long
like
hair. Yeah,
super
that's right.
hippie long hair, like on cover of your book.
Yeah, maybe right there.
There you go. You look.
Talk about low tech. I was just holding up my shirt to show a picture of me taken by David LaChapelle, which is on the cover of my book, Billion, for those of you guys who are listening. And I just looked at all these guys at how normal and down to earth they were. I mean, it was really surprising. And then it clicked for me. I was like, what's the one thing that all these guys have in common? And it was that none of them really fit in. They didn't fit into any mold. And they were all musical geniuses. They were all like, miles above and beyond the rest, and their music lives on forever. But really, they didn't fit in, and they owned it. They were okay with it. I mean, I looked at Michael Stipe, he's just, and now if you look at him, he's got like this big beard, and he's kind of awkward. And, you look at any of these guys, even like the rock star, and you really see that, once again, these were not the bully cool kids. These were the kids that were weird. They were, they had these like hidden interests that may not have been cool at that time. And so that was an insane night, but it really led to that realization that, you got to embrace your inner weirdo. You have to embrace this side of yourself that really makes you cool. And at the same time, like, and I know you teach this a lot, be able to not give a fuck about what other people think about you.
It's really hard to teach that. I think there's a couple of books with that in the title, how not to give a flying F of what you think about. And it's challenging. And I think about there's a concept of the needs, 6 human needs. And I write about it in the book called Success: Secrets of the Rich and Happy. But I absolutely got it from Anthony Robbins, so I give him full credit. There's the Maslow hierarchy of needs, which I think we all kind of know about, or his chart security, etc. But Tony has a twist on it. I don't know if Tony invented it, but essentially, it's like you have a need for community, you have a need for significance, and you have a need for companionship and intimacy, right? And he said what's interesting is those are on polar opposites. So the more significance you have, the more isolated you become. And so super famous people have security guards, they've got private numbers, like they've got gates. They end up isolating themselves because they have such significance. Some of them live really lonely lives. And then the other times, if you have all this connection, then you don't have any significance because you're in the same pool. So what you're talking about is sort of this human need to be unique and different and to follow this blazing path, which could end in horrible. Most musicians are such a risk to be able to move to Hollywood and become an actor or musician. Yet if they break through, man, the benefits are outstanding. But when you're a musician and you're struggling and you really believe in yourself, that's a very lonely time in your life. And it's very easy to give up. You always hear a story about the fifth Beatle. They couldn't hang in there. They got married, they had kids, they took security, they took the easy path
Yeah.
instead of taking that really hard path, which doesn't always work out. I mean, you're the one of the few people I knew or I know that your first or second business, you kind of hit a home run. Like, it was pretty cool for you to do that. And you haven't read Shaheen's story; it'll be in the Billion book. But like, you hit a home run right off the bat. What's interesting is you tend to also continue to hit second, third, strong base hits because you're not dumb. A lot of people get one movie role, the one hit album, and then they completely burn out. They end up in rehab. You never hear from the rest of your life. How is it that you not only did well your first venture, but continue to sort of have a stable family life, have great friendships, and continue to build businesses in a way that really you never? And I know I'm saying you never fail because we've talked about that before. We're used to getting limited failure and feedback, but we're not risking everything at our age. You're risking small, and then you're hedging your bets, you're hacking, and then you're exploding on something you really get. That was a long question to ask you. How is it that you still retain your uniqueness and your creativity, but you avoid these huge failures in your businesses?
So you can spread that out into periods of time, right? So now, like what we talk about on the Amazon course and to all my Amazon students. And by the way, I talk about this on every show, but if anybody wants a free course, you don't have to spend any money to learn how to sell on Amazon. Reach out to me directly and I'll send you my 1 hour course. It's normally $200. I'll give it to you absolutely for free just by saying Hack and Grow Rich podcast. But what I wanted to say is that the way that it worked for me was that I just did not give a fuck first. I didn't need to read a book. I guess like all these books with, fuck in the title. I guess millennials really need to be yelled at for them to understand spirituality, right? Our generation was like, go get it, the giant within, you can do it, right? And then this new generation, you got to be like, fuck, right? Like the Gary Vaynerchuks and, even Tony Robbins is cursing now because he's like, no one's listening. That demographic's not. They're watching Insta and TikTok. So he's like, fuck, and they're like, oh yeah. So it's like there's a guy I watch, Jocko Willnick. I really like him because he like yells and he's like the all-American Navy SEAL guy. And I can see how he speaks to that generation. Okay, but so my first tactic may or may not have been a good tactic, but it worked. Is burn all my ships. So I made a decision. I decided to go through with it, and that I was going to succeed no matter what it took. Remember, the ultimate secret to getting anything that you want, and there's a great book about this by the same title, not by me, is you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to get it. And for me, Bart, I was, pedal to the metal, right? Like there was nothing that I wouldn't do within reason and the law to get what I wanted to get and to get where I was going to get. And I didn't care if I was going to fail. It wasn't a question for me of, Shaheen, are you going to fail? And then where will that put you? That anxiety did not exist. What it was I'm going to do this until I succeed. So it was me going out there with a bat and just swinging, continually swinging until I hit that ball out of the park or until I hit something out of the park. I was not going to quit. And if the bat broke, I would get another bat. And if that bat broke and the ball broke, I would get another field. It didn't matter. Like whatever it was, I was going to do it until I succeeded. Now, the caveat is I had nothing to lose. You're so much more motivated when you come from nothing. And we talk about this often, how I had a backpack when I left home with everything I owned. And up until, I don't know, the end of Herbal Ecstasy, I had made $1 billion in revenue. That backpack was under my desk and packed. And I remember it always had a new pair of shoes in there because when I got my first, I made my first $100 of disposable income. I bought a pair of shoes because I was like, you know what? If I lose everything tomorrow, I'm going to have a new fucking pair of shoes on my feet that I can wear and walk to whatever my next destination is. I was ready to lose it all again because it didn't matter. I came from nothing. So when you have that mentality, you're willing to burn your ships. It doesn't mean be stupid. It doesn't mean like go and like say F you to your boss and like, cut everybody out when you have nothing holding you up. It means foundational thinking. Build out the foundations that we talk about. You need a job, something that's bringing in revenue. You need, at least two or three other types of income, hopefully one of which is e-commerce. I sell on Amazon to this very day. Amazon seller, and teach people how to do it. But once you have that foundation, you build that foundation out and you use foundational thinking, then you just don't give a fuck. It doesn't matter, because if you fail at one thing, you still have the other pillars. You're still good to go, you know? And for me, that's what it was, Bart, which I think brings us to our final topic before we close out for tonight, which I know you wanted to talk about. And we could really do, I think, another show. We could even bring some experts on. And, um, let me start with time management. So there's a lot of books out there on how to manage time. And Bart, I know that you're very proficient at this too, because anytime we meet, you're always on time. You're super respectful of other people's time. And also, I see you having a good amount of time to do what you want to do with who you want to do, which was our definition of freedom when we started this podcast. So, doing what you want with who you want when you want. So the first thing you need to know about time for the viewers is that we all have the same amount of it. No matter if you're Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, or if you're me or Bart or you watching or listening to this, we all have 24 hours in the day. I don't know anybody who's invented more than 24 hours in a day. So what we know is that those 24 hours we all have. You can't get more, you can't get less. That's what you're dealing with. You got to figure out how you're going to allocate them. And I'll tell you, man, I've got friends when they open up their phone, there's like color coded appointments, like, every minute of the day is spoken for. They've got people booking for them, especially high achieving friends who, have those kinds of calendars. And for me, I'm usually open, I'm flexible. First thing, do not sell your hours. You and me talk about this a lot, Bart, and I know you're a big proponent of this, and it's one of the things that you teach to your students as well. Guys, do not sell your hours. If you're currently selling your hours as one of your pillars as your job, that's fine, but you want to get in a position where you are not selling your hours. I've got three primary courses of income and then a bunch of other things that bring in revenue for me. My first thing is my Amazon business. We sell on Amazon, Etsy, Walmart, all those. And my second line of business is I teach people how to do that. And the teaching, really is a labor of love, but it does bring in revenue. And the third thing is we have the best Amazon agency in the world, where people come to us. We charge a ridiculous amount of money, but we make them a ridiculous amount of money by accelerating their products. The third really is me selling my hours. And that is not the thing I'm most excited about, but the impact that it makes by being able to help these larger brands sell makes sense for me. And now I'm at a position with my agency where I have quality people working for me, where I'm utilizing other people's hours. My hours are fairly limited as far as the agency goes, but if someone's willing to pay, the rate, and I feel that I can be of value, I do step in and provide service, but it is not my most favorite thing to do. So that's the first thing. Get yourself in a position where you are not selling your hours. I think the second thing is really going to be that you need to have an understanding, a mindset. And that mindset is, dude or dudess, you cannot manage time. Time is not something that you can manage. Okay. You can be organized. You can be at the right place at the right time. You can be thoughtful, but you cannot manage time. All the books out there, all that stuff on time management, it's all bullshit. I don't know anybody who's read a book on time management who is a better person for it, or like you're like, man, wow, your life's really in order now, right? The third thing that I would share with you on this is that there are a couple guys, and I'm going to give you the lead, who have written the book. Get these books. That's all you will ever need. There's a lot of second rate, third rate, fourth rate guys out there talking about productivity, selling productivity books. I'm going to tell you the one book that you need, and it is the be all end all. Even if you don't read the book, and you just get the notes somewhere online. There's lots of great services like Scribed or any of those. Although I do feel every single person should read these two books that I'm going to tell you about. Um, you'll be fine too. You can watch their videos, you can watch their lectures, and they really come down to an organizational type thinking. But when somebody wants to make an appointment with me personally, it goes in my calendar. My assistant puts it in a calendar, and that's it. More often than not, I don't make appointments. I say, call me anytime. And people can reach out to me. These are people I do business with or friends. They can reach out to me anytime. And that takes the pressure off of having to be at a certain place at a certain time, and also of missing appointments. If it's important, we will make an appointment and we'll do it. So this is the one and only book that you will ever need on productivity and time management. It is the canon. It is the Bible. It is the only book that you will ever need to be a well-organized and efficient human being. It's called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And this guy is a ninja. He is a jujitsu black belt, although I think he's a karate black belt actually, or he does taekwondo or karate or one of those. He's a legit black belt, but he is a black belt at organizational thinking and productivity. And he's written the canon of productivity, Getting Things Done. He's got, I believe, a follow-up book called, oh no, same thing. He's got a follow-up book called Making It All Work. Sorry. So there's Making It All Work, and then Getting Things Done. Getting Things Done is the book that everybody needs. Making It All Work is another thing. And, you know, as far as efficiency goes, nothing better than the 80-20 principle by Richard Koch. You know, 20% of the work we do brings about 80% of our results. Be more efficient, and your time becomes your own. Figure out what are the unnecessary things. We talk about Bruce Lee. I know you love this quote, Bart. Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, add what is specifically your own. And that's it. Get rid of all the bullshit, right? There's probably 20% of the stuff that you're doing right now that is bringing about 80% of your results. So get rid of the bullshit, do that 20%, focus on that, and you'll have 80% more time. What do you got, Bart? Bart, your audio is muted.
There's a lot of really good information there, Shaheen. You know what occurred to me is we do all have the same 24 hours, and one of my big shifts came in the last 20 years when I realized that I was sleeping about 8 to 9 hours a day, and some people brag about sleeping 4 or 5 hours a day, and I thought, wait a second, that person has 4 more hours a day than me, and that doesn't seem fair. And so, you know, I've read a bunch of quotes that real successful people get up at 5 in the morning, but that's just not true. But I did read that Edison would take naps, Thomas Edison, and those meditative naps would where his most creative ideas come from. Just like you know, we heard about, oh my God, I had this idea in the shower, because you're focused on something else and you're totally relaxed. It's almost like putting you into an alpha trance. So I just decided to take my sleep back. And I made a very conscious point to take nutritional supplements and sleep and track my sleep. I have a sleep app that tracks my hours, and I'm down to 5 to 6 hours of sleep pretty consistently with the nutritional stuff. So that immediately bought 3 hours back in my life. And unless I'm super tired or exhausted, I still do that. So that's the first kind of hack, is get your sleep under control. I don't think, if you have a belief that you need 9 hours, unless you're 90 years old or you're 5, I don't think that's true. I think you're not managing your body right. The second thing that really was an eye opener, and I've probably been doing this 20 years. It's now part of our Life Design by Prism. I think the domain is prismlifedesign.com, PRISM. And one of the things we teach, I've just never seen taught anywhere ever. And it was kind of like from the business coaching. I had a business coach that kind of helped me develop this. And I would track not the things that were productive, Shaheen, like writing a sales letter, sending emails, all those. I guess they call them KPIs. You know, in the business world, what's
Performance
KPI?
indicators.
Right. So like if they're sending an email or make a sales call, like that's pretty overwhelming if you're tracking all those in all your businesses, but you should. And so for me, I realized that I don't want to work for less than $1,000 an hour. And I'm also like you, I don't want to put an hour on my time, but in some cases, in some businesses, you kind of have to have an hourly rate. So years ago, I just put like $1,000 an hour on my website, and no one wants to pay that because it's ridiculously high. But then I realized, hey, I'm getting $10,000 for an hour speech. So really, I'm $10,000 an hour, but that's a performance, right? That's a really crafted performance that took years to develop, right? Or if you're Barack Obama, you're getting 100,000. But I do think that's a great tip. Try not to get into that. I'm going to get back to the enhancements in a second. But the most important thing is that you create delegating systems and then look through your day, your whole week, and look for anything you're doing that's not making you $600 an hour. So the dishes, the cat box, the laundry, all these things which you've been told you have to handle yourself, I have somebody do all that for me. And as long as I'm not paying them fix $600 an hour, whatever it is that I'm making an hour. So what you do is you take your real income. Let's say you're making 100 grand, right? And this is your job, and you're saying I'm working 8 hours a day. You divide that and figure out what your hourly rate currently is, not necessarily what you want it to be. But if doing dishes you can get done for $10 an hour, and you're making 63, you let someone else do the dishes, let someone else do the laundry, and you go work on your business. You go meditate. And this is what really was shocking. So I track this probably for 4 years in a row. I tracked my enhancements, which means working out, taking vitamins, juicing, carrot juice, relationship time. Like I would track anything that enhanced to me personally. And when I was having really good weeks, like 35, 36, 37 points, we kind of use an Excel spreadsheet type format, I made more money. And so when I took care of myself, I had better months revenue wise, which means that I was spending more time at the gym with my girlfriend, jogging or at juicing, right? Instead of working, yet I always made more money. And it was very counterintuitive because they always heard you got to work more, you got to work more. So what I taught me and what I teach my students in the life design program is that when you put yourself first, your emotional well-being, your creativity is more effective, all your work is more effective, and then you're also forced to learn how to delegate and get rid of all these low income tasks so that you can, when you do work, whether it's 2 hours a day, which sometimes I do, or whether it's 10 hours a day, those are so productive and so high impact that it can change your life. So those are my really big hacks is focus on your personal well-being. I don't keep massive to-do list. I'm a lot like you, Shaheen. My days are normally pretty wide open, and it would seem counterintuitive if you have 4 businesses to have an open schedule. But remember, I hire and delegate everything I possibly can. And if I do anything more than 3 times, I write a procedure and I hire someone to delegate it. Because I am like we talked about at the top of the show. I'm a cowboy. I'm a John McClane. Like I'm a rebel. Like I don't really want to be a slave to my own schedule because then I don't have any freedom. And since that's why I got in business in the first place is because I love my freedom. The freedom to create, freedom to play guitar, freedom to go to stand-up comedy, none of which I'm getting paid for. But you know what? I'm paying myself because someone else is doing all the little stuff. And so to me, that's how you create freedom, especially if you own 1, 2, 3, or 4 businesses. Get on Upwork, get on Fiverr, hire people, delegate everything you can, and just make sure that when you are working, you're making $800,000, $900,000 an hour cumulatively for doing what it is that you do that's in your lane, in your brilliance lane. And so if I'm not in my brilliance lane, I want to delegate it.
I love that. So to recap, hack your sleep and look after your own well-being. We should have my buddy Dr. Michael Bruce on. He is the author of The Power of When, which is a book that teaches you how to hack your sleep. So I think that's amazing. Figure out what your hourly rate is. So, that's an awesome hack, Bart. So I think what you were suggesting is figure out any task that you do, how much it would be worth it for you to do it. So if you're changing out, light bulb, is it worth it for you to change that light bulb out for $20? Is it worth it for you to change out for $1? Is it worth it for you to change out 50 cents? And figure out what your hourly rate is, what you charge. And anything less than that goes to the third hack. You utilize somebody else's hours, right? So I love that. Use somebody else's hours. There's people who sell their hours joyfully. So use somebody else's hours. We talk about that in my course too, Bart. Hiring VAs, virtual assistants. We have all kinds of hacks for that, which are amazing. Where you're utilizing a MBA, college educated workforce for just a few bucks an hour to run your business for you. And your final hack was to create systems, which I love. And, any successful businessman will tell you, a business person will tell you that you have to create systems and utilize those systems. So that's great. You should write a book about that. I love those four things could be like, how about this? Unfuck your time. We can talk to millennials. What do you think?
If you use the F word in a title, it's going to be a bestseller.
It's going
That
to
is
be
the
big.
hack number 5. Use the F word whenever writing new books.
Yeah, that's really good. And then, you can do talks where it's just like same time management stuff everyone else is teaching, but you just use fuck a lot. I think it would be good.
That's generally my language anyway. I'm not really a G rated, not because of the topic, because I've never cared enough not to cuss. I was at one of my Christmas parties with my stepsisters, and she literally pulled me. She says, "Bart, you keep using the F word. My family's so offended." And I was just like, well, they should get over it. Like I'm family. Like this is my story. Like it was so weird to be language shamed at like a family Christmas thing because someone else had a belief system that was awkward. And I was like, man, I never cared. If they don't like me, they don't have to hang out with me next year. And guess what? I haven't seen them since then. So
I love
maybe they
that term, language shaming. That's amazing.
language shaming.
Okay. So can you see my screen?
Oh yes, look, that's the opt-in page. Get Bart's book. I think that's getbartsbook.com. And if you go to the /free, you can get the other book, The Success Secrets of the Rich and Happy. And that's just for all the listeners. Thank you, Shaheen. I love both of these books. They're real transformational. Some of them, the Audible is not ready, but at least some of the audio is ready when you do the download. And hopefully I will finish up the full audio book by the end of this year. Thank you. So it's getbartsbook.com. A lot of language in that book, actually. No language shaming, language empowering. And then you are Amazon Secrets. How do they get a hold of your current course,
Yeah.
which I'm
So
really excited about getting in myself actually later
I'm
this
gonna
year?
I'm gonna share that as long as you can just say tits up one more time in this one because we got a lot of calls about that comment, and I think it was one of your best quotes. I've got people who have been watching the podcast and use the term tits up now for the first time.
Well, I actually Googled it because I used it and I was like, man, things are going to go tits up if we don't get our shit together. And what it means is bad. Like it's a dead hog, I think is what Google said, is that the hog dies and the tits are up. And for some reason, people love that phrase.
I think it's awesome. So guys, go to get Bart's book. He's given his book for free. If you go /free and you get Bart's book and you kind of get to know him a little bit better, learn about his book, Success Secrets. Now, Bart, you said that you're going to be recording your book yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, there's about 9 chapters already available. They're on the website in the video training area. But since I rewrote the book kind of completely last year, I think I need to go re-record some of those sections because I updated some of the health stuff and then updated some of the money stuff as well, just to make it a little bit more 2021. And so in the next few months, we'll have the whole audiobook complete. It's just on my to-do list. And if I had a time management book, Shaheen, maybe I would have done this already. So the
Right.
pot calling the kettle black. Apparently, I'm not following my own advice here. I got to get to that.
Dude, so there's been a lot of buzz about Billion. My upcoming book, we were in negotiations, but just pre-COVID with one of the major studios and major producers, and they brought in writers to write the story. And my story, kind of people feel it's like Wolf of Wall Street meets you fill in the blanks, right? So they think it's one of those kinds of stories. So they wanted to make a movie on it. They even casted some pretty big names for it. And then COVID happened, and so now it's back in my court. But my agent wants me to do the audiobook. And every time, right? Okay, so my book is like 330 pages, give or take. And dude, every time I sit down to do it, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to take a long time. And so I figured it out. It's like 16 hours. And I keep going back to like, I interview, voice actors and they read it and I'm like, they're really good. And they give me the demos. And I've even paid a couple guys to record a couple sections of it so I could see what it's like. And I love it. And then I'll tell somebody like, somebody in the business or a friend, and they'll be like, you're going to record it yourself, right? It's the first thing that comes out of people's mouths that you're going to do it, right? You're going to read it. I'm like, dude, it's like 16 hours. Now, the time I can figure out, but the patience of reading 16 hours in a row is excruciating for me. So I'm going to do it, Bart. I'm going to record it myself. For anybody who's listening to this, there will be an Audible book, and I will do it because I know I've got some really good coffee, and I've got some Accelerol, our nootropic pill that we make. And I'm going to pop some Accelerol and some coffee, and I'm just going to glue my ass to this chair and do it. But can you share with me how I should get this done?
Yes, I will give you the ultimate audiobook hack. You're going to
Okay.
love this. And then you've never heard this before. So one of the things you have to understand is it's 16 hours finished, but that means it's 32 hours of recording or more. Because every sentence you may make a flub or make a mistake. And because the room tone is always different, especially if you change locations, it's really hard to just edit in one word. So here is the hack. As you're reading this book, whether it's scrolling through or you're ad-libbing or whatever, keep one of these. And this is what you call like a Hollywood slate. And you can use your hands. You can always clap, but your hands are going to get really red. Because what's going to happen is you're going to read something like this. Billion. How I became the king of the thrill pill cult. Space. And then what you do, you leave spaces, and every time you make a flub, then what happens, your editor can just scan through there visually, and he knows you made a flub. And then those long spaces can be cut down, and you've just made your editor breeze right through it. You don't have to worry about making flubs. Here's the thing. You are going to make a flub. You're going to get too close to the microphone. You're going to have a spit thing.
Yeah.
All those little sounds are not acceptable in audiobooks. So as you listen to them, you're like, whoa, I think I just popped my thing. You'd snap, go back about 2 words, and continue from the full sentence. Don't ever do half a sentence. If you do that, Shaheen, you will fly right through every chapter. And then give yourself a pat on the back, take a break, and then start the next chapter the next day. And then let your audio editor fix all the mistakes. But if you don't use a clapper or this, they're trying to drop words in, they're trying to match words, they're trying to connect a word with a "and," because a lot of us, let's switch to sentence. A lot of us mix our sentences together. Like you couldn't edit in that sentence. If I would have said a lot of us mix in our sentences, you could edit in, but that doesn't sound natural. So if you flub, you got to do the whole sentence over. All right, that's my audiobook technique. Now I'm going to motivate myself to go finish up my Success Secrets of the Rich and Happy book, which is 434 pages, by the way. So I have you beaten by 134 pages. That's why I'm putting it off.
I love that. And you just reminded me of one of my favorite products of all time. Bart, you remember it?
The
Clap
clapper.
on, clap off. The clapper. The original Alexa. Guys, for you guys who were not around in the 80s, we had this thing that came out. They made gajillions of dollars with it called the clapper. And it was a wall plug that had something in there that would hear when you clap. Was it one for on or twice for off? And you could clap once and your lights would come on, and clap twice and the lights would go off. And they sold billions of those. Everyone had them. It was like the cool thing, right?
They were all over late night infomercials. It was the thing to have. It was like the Ronco thing. So good.
Okay, so Bart, I know you're giving away your book for absolutely free. For the first 12 people that go onto the website is up now. It is thrillpillcult.com. This is the website for Billion. How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. This is for my upcoming book that's coming up in July. I will give you, for the first 12 people, I will give you a Billion t-shirt, which is pretty awesome. If you can see, it's got a picture of me in my 20s on there. It'll have this picture on it. Make sure you specify your size. So just go right here onto the contact link, and go ahead and fill out the form. And at the bottom, put Hack and Grow Rich Podcast. Send me a t-shirt. And for the first 12 people, I will send you a t-shirt. Make sure to include your street address and your full name and email, and I will do that for you. And also, if anybody is interested in learning more about Amazon and selling on Amazon, reach out to me. Guys, don't get taken in by fake Amazon gurus, people on Instagram doing that thing that they do with cash. You do not need $1 to start your Amazon journey as an Amazon seller, selling on Amazon FBA. I will give you my 1 hour mastery crash course for free, for zero. Go to shaheenshayan.com, click on the link for course, or reach out to me on Thrill Pill Cult website. It's thrillpillcult.com. And really appreciate you guys. If there are any topics that you guys want us to cover, reach out. Anybody you want us to interview, reach out in the show notes. If we go with your suggestion, we will send you out a copy of Bart's book and a free Thrill Pill Cult t-shirt, Billion 3 Thrill Pill Cult t-shirt. Thank you for joining us today. Bart, you are a rock star. We appreciate you, man. Really, really shared some gold nuggets there. So amazing. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.